Hey everybody, how you doing? Yep, I'm live vlogging from bed. It's been a long day, but there are at least two vlogs I want to get out before I go to bed. One of them is on the City of Oakland's 21-23 budget, which was just passed by the Oakland City Council about an hour ago. And it's disappointing because it takes, let me put it this way, crime in Oakland is up considerably. And it has been since the early days of the pandemic, and it just has gotten worse. And the damage that businesses have taken because of the pandemic and riots and disinvestment have made parts of Oakland look like a complete war zone. Cheek by jowl with new buildings going up, new high rises. Oakland is starting to take on the look of Blade Runner. But what kind of steps does the city council take to curb these problems? None. They beef up the Department of Violence Prevention. But the nature of the Office of Violence Prevention and the issue that I've always had with it is that it responds to, by its nature, it responds to violent acts. So that act has to be violent. Get this, an act has to be violent for the Office of Violence Prevention to intervene. It doesn't work to make society in Oakland less violent by making sure, for example, people get more money or find jobs or understand key resources. It doesn't ease the pressure of living that leads to violent acts. It's more like this kind of psychological salve, And that's the issue I've always had with the idea that was originally formed by Lynette Gibson McElhaney, that the ironic twist of the Office of Violence Prevention was that violence had to be there. In other words, without any violence to prevent, right, there was no reason for it, okay? That's the weird aspect of the entire office, and yet it gets beefed up. People complain about overtime for cops, but if there weren't so many instances of crime, if we didn't have the situation in Oakland where you had or have to be hurt before the police show up, think about that dynamic. We wouldn't have this issue where police overtime was so great. And then again, we have a large homeless population we've done nothing about. I don't mean in terms of removal, I mean in terms of getting them homes at a meaningful rate, like 3,000 or 4,000, right, at once, and money. We haven't done any of that. So it's not surprising that when the mayor came out with her statement, and this is what she said. She said, the budget passed today by the Oakland City Council makes bold investments to reimagine public safety through violence prevention and non-police strategies that I strongly support. And so do I. I mean, I've always felt that this was an issue of reforming the police, not defunding the police. But let me continue. She writes, unfortunately, it also cuts 50 police officers who respond to Oaklanders' 9/11 calls and enforce traffic safety. It also cuts much needed future academies, which will significantly reduce police staffing and delay response to Oaklanders in their time of crisis. It will force our officers to work even more overtime shifts, which are expensive and unsafe for officers and residents alike. I believe that until we have proven alternatives, we cannot destroy Oakland's current public safety system at a time when we are losing so many to gun violence. I commend Councilmember Lauren Taylor, District 6, for offering a measured compromise that would have funded all the new investments to reimagine public safety while still preserving the basic police services our residents rely upon, including ceasefire, which has been proven to reduce gun violence. It is difficult to understand why council members Nikki Fortunato Bass, she's the council president, um, and Libby should have referred to her as the council president. That's another issue. But the whole point is uh, Oakland District 3 Councilmember Carol Fife, Oakland District 5 Councilmember Noel Gallo, at-large Councilmember Rebecca Kaplan, and Oakland District 4 Councilmember Sheng Tao voted against Councilmember Taylor's proposal, moved for a vote by Councilmember Trevor Reed. There were only two no votes of the budget. And the tableau was really not a great one. It was like, okay, the two black members of three of the Oakland City Council that are one. And I'm not surprised that Council Member Carol Fife is not with them. And it doesn't surprise me. It seemed like they might be together, but they're not. Okay. Okay. And so anyway, all right. The mayor goes on the right that maintain that all the new investments in would have preserved the basic public safety response our most vulnerable Oaklanders rely on in their most traumatic time of need. Our community is suffering, and unfortunately, the mayor writes, the impacts of violence and trauma are falling more heavily on communities of color in East and West Oakland. Ain't that the truth? My office will continue to work in partnership with the Department of Violence Prevention and the Police Department to interrupt the cycles of violence affecting our city. We also aggressively seek out the resources announced by the President Biden yesterday to address the horrifying increase in gun violence that our city and many others are experiencing right now. You know what really bothers me about the way Oakland has changed over this time? Let me show you something, folks. This was very disturbing. And I'm going to show you this page of, I share the screen here. This is what you get when you search for small business loan in Oakland, okay? Now, you used to get the Oakland Economic Development Corporation, where you could actually go and get a loan for your small business, because it was funded by the redevelopment agency. The redevelopment agency funded the creation of up to 120 job training program organizations alone, and it had a number of different funding levels, loan levels for small business. Today, this is what we have. They send you to Lending Tree for Oakland Business Loan. All right. Business loans, fast funding from Funding Circle. Of course, there's the SBA, no collateral. And then Oakland says financing you for your business in Oakland. And they talk about these are limited. This is 2018. All right. They updated it into this year, but it says if you need money to start and grow your business, think about what types of financing best fits you. Loans from community organizations, institutions, banks, all right, the crowdfunding. And then they mentioned Kiva. And Kiva's been Libby's thing. Kiva is a startup. And I said to her, you're basically seceding our small business lending and assistance infrastructure to a startup that could go out of business. Yeah, that's what she's done. Okay. And this is absolutely ridiculous. Why is this important? Because in the old days, as they say, or as I say, we used to take money and you could actually track how Oakland was using its money to help create small business employment. Why? Because it could say, hey, look, we loaned X amount and produced Y amount of jobs. Oakland cannot say that anymore because Oakland doesn't do that. I repeat, Oakland cannot say we lend or give grants to X number of organizations, which then produce Y number of jobs. Today, if it says that, you have to point to the SBA program that happens to exist, where an Oaklander can use it. But Oakland has not focused on reviving its once great small business economic development lending program. It let it die when Jerry Brown ordered the end of redevelopment. The tax increment financing fueled the loans. And it's one more example of how people today don't understand the power of the enhanced infrastructure development zone program. Okay, so all this infrastructure has been done away with, and I argue the city is far less effective at running itself from an economic standpoint than ever before. It just exists to have a police force and fire and city services, and that's it. But in terms of economic development, El Zilcho. I mean, how can you claim to improve the lives of people better if you're not going to do economic development where it counts, funding your small businesses? That's what we used to do. Okay, we used to do that. So we're screwed, you know, and it's not getting any better. And unfortunately, it doesn't show any signs of getting better. I pray for the infrastructure bill to come through, but even if it does, it's not going to be that thing that saves Oakland. We've got to change our structure so we do economic development again. Subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark oaklandnewsnow.com. That ends this broadcast.